Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bájò, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bájò, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. Ashen's the Ashen Forge.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are y'all doing?
Hanging in there.
Good. We sprung forward, so I'm a little sleepy.
Yeah. They took our time.
Yeah,
But,
this...
it's not like I wasn't playing Nightingale or anything, so that had no factor in me being sleepy.
Yeah, I wish I was still playing, but early access.
You've got other stuff to play.
Yeah.
You hit endgame, so what were we gonna do anyway?
So Nightingale has had an issue with what do they call it? You have a home server, your homeland, like where you are. What do they?
Realm.
Yes.
Your
Yes.
respite realm.
Yes. And apparently they've just been having a hard time with it. I don't even know what it is, if it's just disappearing, if you can't connect to it, but everybody's stuff is basically reset back to zero. And so I was playing yesterday. I actually was going to do some testing for you all. I was curious, was getting some T4 fibers, T5 fibers, was going to make some outfits. Does that change color? Does it change how they look? That sort of stuff. Find more out about weapons, and I went out hunting, got a bunch of fiber, got a bunch of wood from T4, T5 wood. Go back to respite. Well, shit, everything's gone. Like, okay, and which is hilarious, which was kind of funny because I think I had just asked, like, not much earlier in our Discord chat, like, had anyone been affected by this? Because they put out a post saying, oh, by the way, people are saying that since our last patch, their realms are disappearing. And sure enough, it's gone completely, all of it. So I filled out my form, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's a form to get it back. They seem confident they can reset it within 24 hours, so we'll see.
But yeah,
that is definitely an inconvenience because the way the game is set up is such that you don't have a shared inventory across all your boxes or all your servers, or even if you're just in your base, you can't just craft out of things in your inventories quite yet. It's on the patch notes for something they want to add, but it's not there yet. So it's if you lose your realm, you basically lose all your stuff except what's on your person. And what's on your person is definitely going to be if you didn't drop some of your tools off and you've got at least one set of all your tools and your clothes and stuff, you can at least build back up a little bit faster than starting from zero. But that's that's not a way to run a game.
Yeah, no.
So they're using that early access title, I guess, a little liberally, because yes, it's early access. Here are the things that might randomly happen after some updates. I wonder if it's something involving some of their efforts to make the offline mode and they accidentally turned off something that reconnects to something in a correct way.
I don't know, but if for some reason it's gone, it's just gone, I'm done playing for a little bit because that's a lot of hours disappeared. Just even for that. Well, you visited that building. Sorry, we're talking about a completely different game here. We should be talking about Ash's Creation. But anyways,
it happens. I think it's relatable.
I mean, you.
I mean, Ashes Alpha 1 had a lot of wipes.
Yeah.
If you really got invested, you really spent that time grinding that character to the max level that was available, good on you. It's going to be wiped. and then it's going to be wiped again when you do it the next time. Play it at a regular pace. Don't just try to rush it. I mean, they need data on people rushing it, sure, but don't burn yourself out if they're just going to wipe it again.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not a game that says there's going to be wipes. This is a bona fide
Yep.
failure on their part that they seemingly have a way to fix, but you got to ask them.
Yeah. No, this
Yeah.
this this was, yeah, even for an early access title, I feel like, okay, everybody's stuff disappearing. It's a big deal. Probably need to figure that out. Because you're right. I have nothing to do. I had to create like a bed just because I was about to pass out and die from lack of energy and sleep.
Yeah.
Um, but then it was like, I'm just
Time
going
to
to
get
turn this
some
off.
sticks and make a tent.
So, but yes, it is relatable to Ashes of Creation. Server issues are probably the number one killer, I think, of MMORPGs as far as public opinion. I mean, I feel like when I'm thinking back to some releases recently, New World having issues, although they had a lot of just client side issues.
There's issues top to bottom over there. Things that are you know bad, and then even worse from there. So
Yeah, but if you
yeah,
can't connect,
it's a thing that yes, I would say of the milieu of things that will sink a live service game, technical issues, specifically basic connectivity and interaction. If you ain't got that, you ain't got a game. It's pretty much that simple. So yes, I 100% agree. You got to be able to keep things. If you demand that everything is on live servers, um, uh, you're gonna have to make sure they're always there and ready and waiting. That was actually one of the things, thinking back to in the Wayback Machine here, Landmark. Uh, some of the most amazing things people would make, and then when the server goes down and back up for a moment, half of their hookups got busted, and it wasn't something you could just copy paste. I remember somebody during one of the tours, it was either one of mine or someone else's, was going around and said, "Hey, this is pretty cool. What are you doing here with this giant board?" He said, "Oh, the last little quick update or server going down and coming back up completely broke my fully computerized battleship game that I built using the whole system. So I'm sitting here fixing all the wiring and logic gates and everything." And when I saw that, it's like, man, I'm glad I just have like a gimmicky bowling alley and like launcher, like carnival rides compared to what this person has set up, because mine's easy to fix and I can even make it better every time I do it. Theirs, no, thank you.
so Ashes of Creation commissions. We got through a bit. I think there was still quite a lot to talk about. We didn't get through questions. There's also this whole time forum dev discussion thing. If we have time, that's the reason for the title of the stream, the time experts. Um, which was, I think Ash is running out of, I think they're running out of questions to ask. But um, if we have time, I would like to tackle that a little bit. Um,
I actually want to kind of address that one right now, real quick, because it's a bit of a silly sort of thing. The whole idea of people being experts
So give us the
is,
question. Give us the question. Set up the
yeah,
question
yeah.
for us.
Do you
I
have
can pull
the
it. Yeah, I get real quick.
yeah, get that up,
Um,
because it's a kind of a silly question to begin with.
Dev discussion number 61, time dedication. How much time do you think someone should invest in order to become an expert at an MMORPG? What are the differences between an expert player versus a casual player? Time commitment, skill, and game knowledge. Um,
Now, just in that question, they said two completely contradictory things. Are we talking about being an expert in an MMO, as in you understand the systems and the mechanics even if you don't play it very much? Because that is an expert in MMOs that may understand your game, but may not actually be an expert player because the actual put your hands on mechanics is less entertaining to them than like crunching numbers and knowing all the data. So
Yeah,
just on
ca-
surface level, it's a weird question.
yeah. Casual vs expert is not the. It's like apples vs
It's
liver.
like PvP versus PvE. It's
No,
really
no,
it's such
it's
an
apples
odd.
versus liver. It's not even the same thing.
For
And
some reason,
it's an odd sort of thing to me because they keep on saying, take your time, enjoy the game, play it for what it is. Don't try to rush. It's stupid to rush. Enjoy the game. It's the journey, not just the destination. And then, coming with a question like this, and it's like, well, is it the journey or is it the destination? What does it mean to be an expert? How much time does it take to be an expert? It's like, well, I don't know. Are people rolling like 8 alts so that way they can play all the different archetypes and then find one they like and play it again better somewhere else? Like, what are we talking about for what it means to be an expert? Even that word itself is
Who has the
very
goal of being an
subjective.
expert? I'm not trying to be an expert. That's my goal is not to be an expert. Not from playing the game anyway.
Gold farmers, they want to be experts so that way they can farm gold efficiently and find sneaky ways that they can filter and funnel it without it looking like they're doing illegal transactions.
There is a play style of people wanting to have the most efficient tactics available. Sure, that's a play style. Not everybody's trying to do that. You just want to be good, reasonably good. I want to be able to go in and have some fun and be good at the stuff that I want to do. I don't have to be an expert at it necessarily. Just need
I
to be able
want
to
to
do the
I
stuff that I want to do.
I want to know why they weren't comfortable with saying hardcore versus casual.
Exactly.
Why why was the word, because that is what they're asking. But even with the clarifying remarks, because I think one of the posts, like the second post, maybe it's been removed right now.
Oh, but that's not a time thing either, right?
Oh no, it was the fourth post by Nair. It's like he says, "What exactly are you trying to figure out here?" Like we don't understand the question. Uh,
Yeah.
and that was my point as well. Is that you don't, being an expert can be completely unrelated to time, like how much time you're playing. You can have a casual player who's an expert in understanding the game and its systems. Equally, you can have a hardcore time player who is
Hmm.
who just doesn't know anything other than how to mash buttons in PvP, and maybe that's where
Or
they're
not.
an expert, but they don't expert the whole game. But that
Or they're
goes
not
into
interested in being an expert.
right, and it gets into there's like different like you can't. What does an expert mean? Like every single system, because that's going to be almost no one. An expert in what you're interested in, what you're doing. Like um, what's a good example? I don't know, crafting in World of Warcraft. Like you can know everything there is to know about your professions, have absolutely no desire to PvP, and know nothing about battlegrounds or arena or any of that. Like, but if you're an expert in one and not the other, are you not an expert? Like, it's such a hard question to answer. Um, it,
Okay, I'm gonna go for another throwback. If anybody remembers this quote, I think it was Diggs that you had. Uh, let me see if I can actually find the actual quote. Um, yeah, I'll come back to it.
and Bochi
Yeah.
mentions
I mean,
10,000 hours.
and three.
Ah, no, here was the quote. It was, I think, off of like a Reddit or something about, and this is still just me off of memory. Somebody said about New World, this game's already been solved, or this game is solved already, something along those lines. And I'm thinking it's like, you mean solved like, tic tac toe? Like there's only a certain number of outcomes and you can predict them all for a game that hasn't even released and has like updates and stuff coming. It is a solved game. And so that's what I kind of think about is like what it means to be an expert is that you have effectively solved the game. You can see through all the puzzles and systems and mechanics. You know where everything's going. You understand where all the narratives go, and you can, with enough influence and enough buy-in from other players, you can make any event or any consequence occur on any server just by using your knowledge of having solved the game. Because I don't think this is one of those kind of games. I don't think this is the sort of game that you just plain will solve. And so, what would it actually mean to be an expert? Um, I honestly think it's even less of being a player and more just mining all of the data of all the players. So that way, you yourself are never going to find all of the recipes and all the modifications. But if you scour through all the conversations and all the streams and all the videos and compile all that data, you'll probably be able to get a hell of a lot closer. That said, you're not playing the game, you're playing the, being a statistician observing the game at that point, which is decidedly different than being a hardcore player. Which
Well,
kind of goes back to the idea that I was saying before about the question about being an MMO expert, regardless of being a player.
Well, but also like, uh, let's say it takes 85 hours to become an expert. So the uh, hardcore time person gets there in 2 weeks, and the casual time player gets there in 4 weeks. I don't know what, and does that matter? Why does it matter that the hardcore time player got to 85 played hours quicker than the casual time player? What the, he, you both get to the end game, and by the time you get to end game, then you've played long enough to become an expert theoretically, if you're interested in being an expert. I just don't understand why it's worded that way, casual versus expert. Like,
I
unless,
would go as far as to say somebody would likely have more expertise in one particular MMO if they've got a very high level of proficiency in dozens and dozens of MMOs, all up and down and around from around the world and across different companies, and that they have a whole lot of understandings of a whole lot of systems that they can walk into a game and start putting all the parts together a lot faster than perhaps somebody who's never played an MMO before and this is their first one playing, and maybe they know games a little bit, maybe they're like somebody's spouse or sibling or something that like sees this cool game and wants to come in and like make laser horses and stuff.
oh, you're talking about newbie versus expert there, right? Not casual versus expert, but newbie
Yeah,
versus expert.
I mean,
Um,
you don't have
but
to, but no, that's the thing though, you can be a newbie and not necessarily be casual. You can be a hardcore
I'm
newbie.
I know. Yeah, and I think the question was supposed to be about specific game, not MMO in general. I think that's the way I took it. But I mean, it's a horribly worded question and strange concept. I mean, it's mostly just confusing.
what are they?
Actually, instead of tomatoes versus liver, I think it's like one of those times that a politician makes like a big typo or like some big mistake, and then everybody's just talking about that mistake instead of the thing they actually said. And so it's one of these just like, yeah, here we said a thing, talk about it. It's gonna rile some people up. And it's like, well, I guess it's just maybe there's better
Yeah.
questions to ask.
Hmm.
Well, I'm not
But
sure
it's whatever.
what the goal is. Usually, these questions are trying to help answer something for them, like preferences or ideas. I'm not even sure what they do with this. I mean, there was a clarifying part where he says, uh, what are the differences you see in casual versus expert level play on a day-to-day basis in your favorite MMORPGs? I mean, I guess that could be taken back and something taken from that, but
If that's the question they specifically want to know, I mean, my answer is pretty quick on that. Casual gameplay is when you can log in for like 15 to 30 minutes, do something that's productive towards gameplay in some manner, and then log off and feel like you've made a bit of progress. Um, Instead of more of the expert level gameplay is where you do have somebody on comms saying clear comms, and then starts issuing commands to all the players and having tactical effective gameplay going on so you can defeat bigger and tougher stuff. Like that's kind of where the casual versus expert, when you have to really exert your skills and abilities and have proper gear and everything that's specialized for the situation. That's where you start getting into more of the expert stuff, things where your build largely doesn't matter and you're not going into high risk sort of activities. That's more what I think of as casual. And again, like the idea of playing for 15 minutes to an hour, not having to contact your guildies and meet at a spot or whatever. You just, all right, I'm gonna pop on, I'm gonna play for a little bit, then I'm gonna get to where I'm gonna get and log off, and that's gonna be that. And that's as simple as casual gameplay can be.
Well, but for instance, so I consider myself a casual challenge player, casual challenge hardcore time player. Um, my EQ2 character only wore starting rags uh, for their gear score. They increased gear score through jewelry that was crafted by their slave master and uh, and their weapon, which was a rod or something, a staff or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, but uh, that character was max level 85 in starting rags, and casual. Not trying to be an expert at everything, and time had absolutely nothing to do with whether that character was going to be more expert or not. Same thing. I'm like fashion over function, so it's more important to me for my character's outfit to be matching than it is for me to have the max stats that I can possibly have. And I usually have goals like I think my Tauren character in a WoW could only wear kilts. So if there was an upgrade for legs, but it was not a kilt, that Tauren is not going to wear it until the next available kilt comes along. Um, and I'm not trying to be max stats and wear whatever as long as I get the max stats. That's also not going to change with time. That's not a time factor. That's just a playstyle factor. So it's again just weirded, worded weirdly because those things aren't all the same. They don't go together.
Honestly, I wouldn't take you as somebody that would wear like rainbow clown armor for max attributes. No, that doesn't seem like the way you play.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
yeah. So, well, I guess that's that. That's a simple, very simple dev discussion to talk about. Not
Yeah,
much really to discuss.
I think we spent more time asking about and talking about the question itself than we
Yeah.
did actually answering it. Which, whatever, it happens. We're here
I
to
don't know if there is
banter.
an answer. What's the answer? I don't know what the
Uh,
answer is supposed to
Blowing in the wind.
be.
So, um, let's see. So commissions. It's it's going to be an interesting sort of thing. We didn't really touch much on the Q&A, did we?
No.
No, not at all. There's quite a bits to go over. Actually, I want to before we move into that. So I have been playing Rift, and yes, Rift, and it many ways reminds me a little bit. And I don't know if this is why I'm playing Rift. Actually, now that I think about it, a little bit as to what commissions sort of were. So in Rift, I don't know who all played it. It's an older game. It's still going. Um, you can often get a quest, and you'll get sent out somewhere in the world, and then you have all these rifts that are opening. You have all these events that are occurring around you that you can choose to participate in. Now, there's not node change. The world isn't necessarily changing by closing these rifts, but you are getting more emergent gameplay, and it just happened to remind me a lot of commissions that they're also sending you out somewhere. You're not going to see a rift, but you're going to have a side quest. You're going to have someone pop up that they've sent you towards, and that is going to allow you to have some content in a much similar way that then hopefully eventually leads to more story-driven world changes. But I don't know, just felt very as I jumped in and started playing, I'm like, huh, this feels a lot like how commissions has been described. So
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
about the closest I can think of something that's an active game that is similar to what they were talking about. So
Mhm.
Yeah, it's making me wonder what else we're going to see in terms of getting quests from NPCs and what those are going to be like. How much of it is conditional, where certain uh, configurations of characters will get access to things that other configurations won't for various reasons, as well as potentially them both being able to get the same sort of quests but different outcomes and different follow-up steps. The possibility for failure, the possibility for being able to complete the quests, but the NPC no longer being there because the place got raided and they got killed. Um, and then, where you can go with that, if that becomes its own quest, or if it's, well, snooze, you lose. It's a good thing that you did that thing for that person, but nobody's around to give you a reward anymore. Too bad. You don't even get XP. Like that seems like a bad sort of thing. And I still wonder how that's going to work out with commissions
Wait,
as well.
what's bad
But
about it? Tell me about the bad part.
the part that's bad is if you've completed all of the narrated, not saying as part of the main storyline, but the narrated steps involved with something, and instead of being able to like even confirm to some official somewhere, well, I completed this task for this person, however this person is no longer on this world, so let it be known and get like at least some experience rep out of it, instead of you've completed all of this stuff and then womp womp, pretty much all you can do is click the abandon button and get nothing for it and not even tell anybody that you did it, to let the world know what transpired. That's I guess the part I'm talking about, is that having to click abandon on something because the person you turn it into is dead and gone, won't respawn, too bad, so sad, that you can't at least pass along the confirmation at like the your local town hall or whatever.
I think that's the beauty of having it go through the commission bulletin board versus
Oh no,
going
I
to a
meant I
specific
meant
NPC.
for NPC quests in particular, not the
Hmm.
bulletin
Yeah,
board.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the part that you have me thinking about is just that I would like there to be um partial quest completion, especially partial dungeon completion. Like it shouldn't have to be that you go through and you clear the entire dungeon. It should be okay to just go through and clear portions and leave, and then either let other people completely clear it or come back later and try and explore some more. Um, I think for some reason in MMORPGs, it's typical for us to expect to completely clear. And I don't know if that's the case in regular D&D and tabletop. Um, Maybe because, you're probably not going to finish the dungeon in one session, right? You're probably going to come back anyway. Um,
If it's if
players
it's
will come
like
back. I mean,
if
the
it's
players are
the
going to come back.
early, oh no, no, I'm
Hmm.
I'm saying if it's like the early era sort of D&D where everything is a dungeon full of traps where you don't want to go everywhere because everywhere you're going to risk, so many traps that'll kill you in so many different ways versus more in the modern era you have ways to detect the things. They're not nearly as many of them. They're generally not going to wipe the party. Um, and so it's a bit of a different sort of thing. The older sort of idea of you don't want to go everywhere because you're just going to die compared to um, more in the modern era. It's like, yeah, why don't we double back and check those rooms? I mean, the place isn't falling apart and like shaking to the ground or anything. Might as well take our time on the way back. We're already here. What's it gonna be? More kobolds and a salamander? Ooh, not a big deal. Like that's kind of where it feels like a little bit these days. And maybe the DMs have been a little bit too kind on me and the people I'm playing with, but usually it doesn't feel like the old you're gonna die at every step unless you get lucky sort of hero quest and was it the tomb of whatever.
Well, I think just because your quest isn't always completely clear this dungeon. Your quest is like go rescue these people or go find this treasure, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to clear the entire dungeon in order to do that. You go and you finish your quest, and yay, and the dungeon will still be there, and then maybe later there's a different quest in that dungeon.
I could
Well,
see, yeah,
um,
yeah, or even more. What we've seen with Carfin and all the different art pieces and set pieces they've kind of built into it, it makes me wonder if we're going to see a bit of that where instead of go all the way to the top and see everything, it's observe and do this little ritual next to three um, bird soldier statue things that have the red ruby looking eyes. And so you don't have to go through the entire thing. It might be you find two of them in the first hallway, and then the rest of them generally have like, a pack of mobs or something nearby. And so either you by yourself or maybe following in the footsteps of some other folk clear it out, and then you find the third one, you do the ritual. Great. All right, you've done it. You went to the dungeon, you did the thing. If you didn't notice the first two in the hallway at the beginning, or maybe someone had just done them recently, and so they're turned to a different color. All right, well maybe you had to go up a couple of floors, maybe you had to fight some stuff a little bit. You still didn't have to go through the whole thing, and you got it done.
yeah.
A lot of the different art pieces and stuff that are in there, I could see being done as visit this many of them, visit them in a certain sequence, something like that. Maybe the first time you go and observe a few, and the next time they'd send you out with a giant parchment and say, all right, take some rubbings with this piece of charcoal because we actually need to get it in its correct proportions here. So, that sort of stuff would be nice to see. That it isn't just go through the dungeon and wipe everything, but a lot more interacting with the environment.
I think that's reminding me of Nightingale. We had these cool uh, quests in Nightingale where they were like, go gather these relics from these fabled mobs, and you could kill them, but the quest givers were like, we'd prefer for you not to kill them. So here's ways you can make these offerings, and they'll gift it to you. You can use diplomacy to get the stuff we need. Um, and Phantom and uh, I think Paradin, we all went through and did the peaceful way. but most people did not do the peaceful way, is what I'm saying. I'm saying most people just went in and slaughtered them. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I'd like to see a quest that is like, hey, go here and do some stuff in this dungeon. Don't kill the boss. To save the boss for later.
I wonder how
There's
many
some
of them
big guy
came from
there.
Valheim, and it's like, oh, Valheim, see boss, kill boss. That's how it works. Built that house.
Mhm,
Mine those rocks. Kill that boss.
Well, they go
mhm.
one step further in Nightingale that you also get an achievement for completing the quest in a non combative way. Um,
That's
Mm.
nice.
yeah, so I think it has 15 achievements right now, and yeah, several of them are from completing quests like that. So you're given extra
Okay.
incentive, which raises the question of like, well, why are you even keeping in the opportunity to kill them? But I mean, it's a wandering monster, so I guess you have to
Yeah,
leave it
some
as
people might want
attackable.
to do that. I mean, most people are going to probably be inclined to fight and kill Tumok or avoid fighting Tumok, but there's going to be people that just stalk him around, find his home, then come back to his home when he leaves again and start reading his journals and like doing his laundry or something. Leave a little
I,
mint on the pillow. When he comes back, be like, "Ooh, what the hell is this?"
I do have to say, after seeing some of these giant mobs in Nightingale, I was like, why do I care about Tumok? Like these fuckers in Nightingale, I'm like terrified of them when they pop around. Not quite so terrified anymore.
Can
It's
I
been a
add,
later game.
since we're also talking about Nightingale? Sorry, I don't know why. Yeah, it's because you said you were terrified. That's where this thought popped up. Um, Something that is done very well. If no one ever play, if anyone listening to us live, recorded, wherever, if you don't play Nightingale, I want to mention something you're missing, and that I hope many games learn how to implement, including Ashes of Creation, and that's the sound. The sound in the game is absolutely amazingly done for an early access. Um, you can hear
Any game,
things.
any game, any game. Yeah,
Yeah,
the sound is crazy.
it's probably obviously for people with with handicap. It's I don't know. It's something for us to maybe talk about sometime, but for those who can't hear it, because the game, the way it integrates audio into your gameplay is amazing. Because it gets dark, it gets kind of creepy. I mean, it's the mood of the game, but all of a sudden you'll just start hearing little things in your sound, uh, and you realize like, oh, there's something, a monster near me, or you can hear the wolves coming up at you. Um, or the rush of the hogs right before like they push you aside. I mean, the audio is done incredibly well. To add, it just really adds to the experience, and it's not one of those things. I will talk about a lot of things as though they're sort of it's cool for like 5 minutes, and then you just, whatever, you turn the volume off or you don't really care anymore. This is like you have to have it on. Like it's on, and it's not an unpleasurable thing. It's just done very well. So I don't know. Sorry, you mentioned being terrified by some of the monsters. Audio
Sound is
contributes to
part of
that.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gets really
Um,
dark. You can hear the what are they called? The things you're killing, the zombie like things. I forget what they're called.
the bound, the bound.
The bound, like you can hear them start rustling somewhere, and you can hear some moaning, and it's like, well, where are they? I can't see them. It's done very well. So
In the desert, you're thinking, is that the sand blowing or is that the bound warping in? What is that? Um, and just various sounds in the forest at night or in the gloom where you can barely see anything. You're hearing moans and you don't know what the moans are. But you hear like insects and all kinds of stuff just as part of the ambient sound. And yeah, you kind of want the I mean, I often turn sound off. I'm often watching movies or whatever while I'm playing games and or don't have my headphones on at all, but I make sure my headphones are on when I'm playing Nightingale because I'm listening for stuff.
especially when you have a game like Ashes of Creation where you do have camouflage, you do have stealth, you have these sort of mechanics where it's hard to see people. Um, I would love to see the audio done in the same way. I wonder how challenging now that would be, because I can imagine having a 250 versus 250 fight and trying to, with everything else that's going on, spell effects and movement and positioning in the world and all these different things, trying to also coordinate the audio of each player's footsteps would probably be a little bit challenging, probably a little bit overwhelming, but
There gets to be, I would imagine, a range and priority organizational system where it gets to the point where enough sounds that will feasibly block further away and quieter sounds will kind of take over, and the rest will be, ducked out and ignored until they reach a certain threshold. Obviously,
mhm.
a giant explosion a bit further away might, have an audio radius sort of thing that's able to overwhelm the people clanging shields 10 feet away from you, but that's only going to be for a temporary sort of thing, and then it'll go back to more of your proximity sound as the thing that's kind of ducking out all the other sounds. There's ways I can think of it on a technical level, and I don't even do audio engineering, so I'm sure people much smarter than me have a much better idea of how to set all that sort of stuff up.
What was I gonna say? Crap, I got distracted by what's in chat about the audio cues instead of telegraphs, visual telegraphs, which, oh, I was gonna say it's Unreal Engine 5. I think that's what's allowing them to do such great sound. So I'm thinking that um Intrepid should have those same tools that will, or similar tools. They'll do some proprietary stuff, I'm sure, but I think UE5 probably comes with some good tools
Mhm.
to help them with the audio. Um, so yeah, hopefully we are moving into a space where we can get some good audio cues as well. Audio telegraphs, I guess, is what they would be instead of visual telegraphs. Um,
I'll
and
take
that is
both.
one of the things that I say about health bars. I think we have I don't know if it was there last week, but we had a thread topic in the official forums about do we need health bars? Maybe it's better if we don't have health bars. The better we get at having the game represent our senses, we don't necessarily have to have uh, meters and numbers and all that stuff. So yeah, if our audio cues are helping us understand what the health of our opponent is, or that they're about to come behind us or to the side, I am often looking. I'm orienting my head to try and hear where in the game, where, where in the game is that sound coming from? Do I need to? Um, So yeah, as we get more of the senses being able to be represented in the game, then we can maybe do less with numbers and meters and things like that.
Sorry, I'm distracted. So, but yes, as you, yes, I would love to see sound. I'm going to wrap that up, but that thought, I put it in chat. But yes, you hear the sound of a shield getting kind of ready to be thrown, or you hear the crackling of the fire as it's starting to come at your feet, rather than just some circle on the ground that says move.
One of the things that I need my headphones on for, and sometimes I'll have done something like I'm multitasking, so I'm checking something outside of the game, um, and or it often happens sometimes when I'm just waiting. I'm crafting, so I'm waiting for all my stuff to craft, and it's going to take 5 minutes. So I'll go outside of the game and do some extra stuff, and I might take my headphones off, and then I realize that I'm about to die from not eating. There's a little heartbeat sound that will start hitting when you start starving. Um, that I sometimes miss if I don't have my headphones on or some reason the sound is off. I'm like, oh crap. Like you know, I can be doing other stuff in the game, and then I hear that heartbeat, and I'm like, oh, I have not eaten in like, so and so. Um,
What's going to be easier to notice? Like a little, let's call it bright orange box in the corner of the, outside of the focal area on the screen, or the sound of an alarm blaring in your ears. Because I know which one I'll respond to a lot quicker is the sound. I won't even notice the little thing in the corner if I'm like real focused in, on what's going on in front and ahead of me. So yeah, there's definitely an element to using all the visual cues. That said, if that little box in the corner has like a little siren light spinning sort of effect going on, and maybe it's like glowing, it's growing and shrinking or whatever, that's probably going to get my attention a little bit more. Or if it's something that kind of starts in the middle of the screen, kind of transparent, and just swishes down into place, so there's at least a visual cue of like, hey, I just saw something indicating that I've got a box in the corner I need to respond to. But again, if I'm not looking right at it at that moment, I'm looking away over at something else. I'm talking with someone on the second monitor, making sure I've got enough drink before I got to go get up or whatever. Yeah, I might miss that cue visually, and then there's just a little box in the corner. If it isn't doing something active to get my attention, I'm gonna miss it. So, yeah, the audio cues are definitely helpful. Obviously, we don't really use smell and taste much. Smell-o-vision still hasn't really worked. It never
mhm,
delivered quickly enough. It didn't clear quickly enough, and it didn't really smell very good. Like, great
mhm,
for like racing enthusiasts, I guess, that want it to smell like burning rubber. That was literally like they had a kit for engine and car smells, but we don't use those very much. It's mostly what we hear and what we see, and if we've got some sort of feedback, like you got a gamepad with the vibrate functions on it to get
mhm,
a little bit of
mhm,
controller shake. But
mhm.
that's about it for tactile feedback for most modern devices that people would play a game with. And even then, does anybody actually think people are going to play Ashes of Creation with a modern gamepad? Like that seems hard, especially when it gets to typing.
No.
Mhm.
Somebody will
So
try.
I'm sure people will rig it up, but will it be will it be expert gameplay? I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, I think often when that happens with me, I might be also either crafting and or um futzing around with my inventory. Like basically my whole screen is covered with uh boxes of inventory, and I'm like trying to figure out where I'm putting what and making sure stuff is matching, and hopefully my chests are organized well and getting things just so, oh, this one doesn't go in here. We have so many placeholder stuff in there that you're trying to figure out which of these placeholders goes where exactly, and then I look down in the corner, I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to starve to death. Um, so uh, I'm
Yeah,
sure we'll have some of that in Alpha 2 as well. It should be fun.
I would say though it would be an interesting sort of way to specialize to be able to get better and stronger visual cues for incoming damage or whatever, as something people can specialize into, where if you tend to be on the slower side of getting out of the way, or it's a follow the leader, people just kind of, when you move, they move sort of thing, then I can see how being able to get a little bit of enhanced information, where some people might just see the lines on the ground versus you'll actually see the diagram of the whole area that's going to hit in the same amount of time. So you can more effectively get out of the way because that's representing your character being more experienced with being affected by spells, which you can then apply player skill to and get out of the way.
Nero, that's amazing because I don't think it'll be ready for Ashes of Creation, but we might be close to a place. You're reminding me of perception in Dungeons and Dragons. So maybe your race has better hearing. So uh, most people are not hearing that special heartbeat or this whatever, or maybe there is a visual way to indicate smell, or uh, you know, certain races can see things out of the corner of their. I mean, I like that for we've seen that to some degree with rogues. I think especially I first saw that in Neverwinter Online is when rogues are able to see traps, or they get a little flash that a trap is about to appear, based on their perception skill and how high it is. But that would be kind of cool, I think, if yeah, by race, maybe Tolnar have better perception in some ways than Kalar or something like that. Maybe I mean, and I would expect maybe Dunir
Beck have
would.
a twinkling sound when there's a constellation they can look at somewhere nearby.
Hmm. Yeah, so that could be interesting. We might be ready for that. We'll have to see.
It's
That is
not.
still something that I'm interested to see, is more of how the constellations are going to play into missions, quests, general gameplay, discovery, etc.
Hmm.
What were you going to say there?
I was just gonna again say it's something that I have not. I still have yet to like lose interest in. So it is one of those things that on paper I probably would have been like, yeah, that'd be cool for a play session, and then I'm gonna get tired of it, or I'm gonna listen to music, or no, I'm still listening to the sounds, and that's become a way of playing the game just as important as visual. So
Hmm.
pretty neat.
I don't know.
And
I usually only play with game sounds unless like the soundtrack is just so wrong for the actual game that there's no point in keeping it going. But yeah, I'm normally game audio for most things.
and just like that, we are less than 10 minutes left already. This hour has gone fast.
It has.
It's sprung forward.
Well, that happened too. Um, yeah. Weather's going to be nice to see. That's one of the things that I actually kind of wonder when they had talked about how weather and seasonal events would open and block off paths. When the rainfall started, would we see the riverways start to rise up in the area, and downstream of it would roads and paths start getting blocked where you have to use a different route to get your caravan across, or some way to build a makeshift bridge that takes a half a day or something. All of that sort of stuff. Will it erode away something that was previously covered that you can now visit until after the rain's over? You've got maybe until the end of the season before it gets covered again. That's some of the stuff that I'd like to be seeing. That's not just what's happening relative to that area, and oh no, woe is me, we're getting rained upon, don't get shocked by lightning. But even more so, that the area changes so dynamically that it might completely change your plans for what you were trying to do, wanting to do.
Mm-hmm.
You needed to get something that you can only gather when it's dry. Now it's wet. Now you decide, all right, well, when it's rainy, there's this other resource that's primed to get, so I'm going to go hunt those instead.
What do you
That
think about the actual visuals of the rain? Because this was one of the more where we actually got to see view distance change and fog, and the rain seemed. I'm trying to understand how it was tied to the player. I don't know if you paid that much attention. This is probably from watching too much Narc, but like the movement of the camera of the player, the rain like just jilted, like very. It seemed very weird, and I'm sure there's a goal there of trying to keep the angle of it kind of consistent depending on, it's supposed to be blowing a certain way, but maybe I'm going into too much detail here, but the rain just seemed odd. Um, yeah, there you go. Yeah, rain was just a screen effect and tied to the camera from Maxify there. Um, and it felt weird. Like that actually, when it was pointed out, I didn't pay much attention initially, but when it was pointed out and I went back and watched it again, I was like, yeah, that looks weird. And the other part that I thought with the being in the middle of the storm is that the foliage, the trees and the plants also still seem to move weirdly, almost like too much. Like there's this constant like wiggling, almost like it's a pencil being waved, and you're seeing this fake
Mm.
movement.
That is
Um,
one of the things with the wind that's even been an issue since Unreal 4 is that it doesn't always have a good sense of like constant versus gusts. So instead of a constant wind keeping it at about this angle and then gusts bending it even further, and so this is more of the range that it's moving in, that it's just kind of got like more of a springy back and forth like you're saying, where it goes at or beyond neutral and kind of boingy 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 instead of how it would normally be, where there's a constant breeze getting it to a certain point,
mm,
and then if that breeze changes, the angle would change as well as where the gusts are going.
Mm.
So that's one of the things that maybe a little bit more fine tuning, they'll get that. It's maybe a little bit of a lower priority compared to some of the other things that they're working on, but it would be nice to see a little bit more of that going on, and more of the feeling of an actual physical storm where the wind is coming in from potentially different angles at different concentrations, and so you'll get weird like changes in the angle and the wind, and makes it hard to golf if that's what you're into. But I guess archery might be affected.
Yeah, the implementation of the foliage and other plants, the flowers, is a little wonky.
yeah, it's just
Uncanny Valley.
yeah, it's just well, you just mentioned it very well, Neuro. Like it's just this the constant. There's no flux. There's no like what you would expect to be just uneven wind speeds, with a gust here and there, and it's just a constant like just same movement back and forth, just constant. It just seemed just all felt very weird.
Oh, the bunches of grass and the bunches of flowers seem to flatten. I mean, it's like they become two-dimensional instead of uh, a clump of something. They like flatten into something that is moving with the wind, which is a little weird too. So,
Yeah,
um,
Axify makes a good point. Quicker way of doing it, since actual rain would most likely be more expensive and difficult to have isolated areas weather effects. So
we have that to some degree. Yeah.
just a little disappointing if that's the case, because I when they mentioned a weather system, I envisioned a true system of patterns moving across the areas of nodes and zones, but
They can
that's
still have volumes where it's on and off,
Mhm.
kind of moving through the world. And if you're near one of those volumes, if you're in one of those volumes, if you're farther from one of those volumes, you'll get different client side generative weather effects. So the regions where the effect is going on will be consistent for everybody, but the visualization of it, especially for high resource versus low resource machines, will it'll be dependent on what you're able to run and how you're able to visualize it, instead of, oh well, every raindrop's a particle that everybody has to see, it's mandatory, and watching everybody's machines except the top end ones getting melted by it. it makes sense. It makes sense to have that going.
Mhm.
Well, we're almost at 9 o'clock. I also, what did you think about the mage combat? The actual combat that we saw.
It looks like the mage combat we saw before.
Yeah. What about it?
Been mainly movement. I am very happy with the amount of movement that they're displaying at this point within the mage.
Hmm.
There are still
Hmm.
some spells that you obviously have to channel and you have to sit still,
Hmm.
but he's able to escape. He's able to run. There's a lot of movement that he's able to
Hmm.
have, which is nice. And you add
Hmm.
in the sort of ice effects and the sleep and all these things.
Hmm. And
I
I
don't know.
think the hope would be that your cleric could also be mobile as well. Um,
I would hope
so yeah,
everybody's mobile.
yeah,
I don't know who we wouldn't want to have being mobile.
yeah. I mean, I
Uh,
think the tendency in MMORPGs is to have the cleric stand back and be protected, and everybody's going to try and kill the cleric first. So, uh, they're trying to stay out of battle and just heal everybody. But the goal for Ashes is to have the cleric be more like have more options like in Dungeons and Dragons or in Pathfinder, where they can also be in the fray and um, thumping people as well as healing. So
yeah, I get you.
we'll have to see the fighter sometime. Did I hear something was leaked that we might be seeing fighter in this next? What were
Wasn't
we saying in the
leaked.
next?
No, we will. That's the next
Yeah,
live stream. It was a comment. Steven made a comment on Narc's one of his videos.
yeah.
Uh, the
Yep,
comment
that
was
sounds about right.
yeah, the comment was actually more so about the fact that they triggered a lot of this, which we've kind of pointed out the encounter with the boss and the node level change, like they manually sort of triggered some of these things, and that was Stephen was actually responding to that primarily, saying yes, we did, but we had to because the game's designed to take in many players, not just one, so we had to sort of artificially show you what it would be like.
Hmm.
And by the way, we're going to have fighters the next showcase,
Yeah,
and apparently show off some more of the world that we've not seen.
yeah, I saw that.
Because that's been
Including
another Yeah, that's been another critique of narcs, is that we've seen small bits of space at this point. Really only a couple of areas. So
I mean, I
Going
kind of
back to
think.
our conversation a little bit about audio and visual cues,
Mm,
something that I think was a bit less apparent to me during the demo with the mage combat and with the group combat as well was I wasn't really noticing when the debuffs were starting to stack and when they would get, popped over by somebody else synergizing or them, putting it to, the full stack plus one. That was something that didn't seem very obvious or apparent to me, where when they were demonstrating the system, they were focusing on it and calling it out, so it was a lot easier to notice. But that was something that I feel like I didn't really, thinking back to it, I didn't actually see in such a representation that I was able to tell that these things were being done strategically, that they were synergizing in a specific sort of way to eliminate the enemies in specific methods and means. So
mhm.
that was one of the things, I guess, that was a little bit, looking back at it, it's like, hey, wait a minute, that was supposed to be this important system, and I don't know that I really see it being very apparent in see or hear it being very apparent in what we're currently experiencing in these demos.
Mm.
I could be wrong. I'll have to actually go through and watch it again and see if it's obvious or not, or if I'm just looking for little numbers in uh, the enemy's UI to see if that's how it's being indicated. Essentially, that's hard
Mm.
to notice.
Mhm.
That's what it means to be an expert. That when you can look at one of those little symbols in a little box with a number, you know exactly what that means and how to exploit it. or why to look out for it. Like I guess that's what it means to be an MMO expert.
Stephen did also at the start of the stream, since we're talking about the dev discussion, he actually did comment on the esports component, making a good point that part of where he sees a problem with esports and MMORPGs is just progression. That the point of an MMORPG is progression, and you kind of lack that within a esports scenario. But he went on to say that he is a fan of cross server competition. Um, that was something he thinks that he has had fun with in the past, and that he would like to see here. And so I'm assuming that means that once they're able to do so, that will be something we see come across is some sort of realm versus realm, or I guess I don't know what they'll call it, but server versus server competitions, which will be interesting because not all servers will be on. That everybody theoretically is going to be in a different space, like different weapons, different unique items, all of that, based off what we've been told. But when he throws out the idea of cross server esports, that makes me start to wonder how different servers will actually be from one another. Apparently not that drastically different if we're able to have an esport competition. So
I don't know if it matters how different they are.
yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends, right? We just know so little. Like when they talk about uniques, is it all basically the same sword, but you spawned a dragon monster and this person spawned a bear monster, and so the sword becomes a dragon sword and the other becomes a bear sword, but it's actually the same, basically the same thing. Like, is that the kind of change we'll see, where it's kind of more window dressing than actual in-depth changes? I don't know. So
I don't know if it'd be necessarily dragon sword versus bear sword, or it would be more what are the highest quality possible materials relative to who is the owners and major investors in the node where the battle occurred, and that will shape the attributes of it differently. Where if the battle occurred in an area that the Tolnar own, it'll come with this set of attributes, versus if it's something that's like mostly Pyre, but also like maybe 40% like Nikua or something, that it's like a much more like naturey version of that same sort of thing, and it's got a different set of attributes and appearance relative to that. So that could be more of the sort of thing. Take where it's at when it happens, and those parameters for how you shape the thing, if it's not something that a crafter will actually be making themselves.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, we can hope that it gets complex, but I just wonder. I always wish we knew the tech behind this. Hopefully one day we'll get to ask Stephen about it, because as the node changes, like, is everything that the node can be already there, as far as the items, the resources, but because a node took one direction over another, it just simply has a different name, or maybe it looks a little bit different. It has a blue glow instead of a red glow. Where does that make sense? Like in many ways, the item itself doesn't really change much. Because that's what I've always thought, is like, if you're having all these different nodes, like, how are you creating so much content, lore that might not ever be seen, items that might not ever be seen, or not seen for a while? Um, and the more I play that question in my head, the more it's like, well, you probably aren't doing that, um, because that would be madness. That would be just so much stuff you'd have to do. So is it more, let's create a set of items that are going to be here regardless, but then we can kind of play with a little bit with how they either look or what their names are, maybe a little bit with some of their stats. Um, I don't know.
Tons and tons and tons of modularity, like they were talking about with the armor sets, where the difference between how the cosmetics are going to look from character to character will be relative to this giant kit that represents all of the parts and pieces they could use for representing that cosmetic set, and then they mix and match within that kit to fit all of the different people's styles and looks while keeping to the theme. And the only example we've seen so far was so dynamically different that I wouldn't even identify them as being part of the same set. Not whatsoever, not in the least bit. Like, that one was completely off. So I'm hoping they're going to rein it in a lot better and keep it a lot more to the theme and the style of the cosmetic, but then more shaping it to the different people a little bit instead of you know Vec look like this and Kalar look like this and that's how it's gonna be. And like I don't really want it to be that all the Vec are wearing these low cut skin showing like very tribal chic sort of stuff. That they can also wear more of the body covering stuff. They can go out wearing a toga the same way everyone else can go out wearing a toga and sandals.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that I'm hoping they'll do a little bit better with the next time we get to see that, because it's one of those things I was kind of worried about. But now bringing the point back home here, if that's the level of modularity we're seeing with armor sets, I would imagine weapons and components that can go in different weapons and their different configurations is another part of that modularity, where it's not just their attributes but their appearance and the behind the scenes components that effectively would have been used to make and modify it to the point that when you actually see it, that's that's a little bit more of what I'm kind of hoping to see with this, and that I think they're actually anticipating for with the tech here, so that yes, we can have two unique Dragon Bear swords, and they're completely different in appearance and materials within the confines of the kit that was built for it. So if you've got the leaders of the biggest raid guilds on two servers that happen to have that same sword, and their swords clash in the middle of the battlefield, and somebody takes just the most epic screenshot of it, it's the same sword in a different way from a different realm, but it is still that same sword. That's kind of like the how I'm hoping uniques will be effectively addressed from server to server.
Yeah. I put the question in chat. I'm curious because I hadn't thought of that. Like if I am Vec and I want to wear an item in the style of another race, like am I not allowed to do that, I guess, because of how they're talking about the system working? Like is it going to automatically make me wear the Vec version?
Yeah, you don't get surfboard sandals like Nakua. You've got seashell sandals. That's just what it
Yeah,
is.
I don't know that I like that idea.
Yeah, we're gonna have
That's
to see
yeah.
more of
I
that.
rebel against that idea that you're forcing them into things that don't look like, and that's why I think they heard the message loud and clear from everybody when they put that example out, and everybody said, "What is this?" And so hopefully the next time we see it, we're going to see a more like reined in and similar variants, instead of like, well, I bought this because that's what it looked like on a Kalar, but I don't want to play a Kalar. But if I
Yeah,
play, my Vec, it's going to look, goofy. It is not the fancy suit that I ordered.
Hmm. Yeah.
interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I was curious to see how this all plays out. I put No Man's Sky in there because anyone who's played 100 plus hours in No Man's Sky realizes, the novelty of each planet being different, and each player having a different experience. You kind of quickly realize,
Solved game.
yeah, you kind of quickly realize, like, well, yeah, the names are different of every planet, and they're laid out a little bit differently, but it's all basically the same. Like these are all more or less the same types of planets.
It kind of
So
felt like where the game's spore eventually gets to, where everything was all weird and different at the beginning, but you eventually have this sort of convergent technology that everybody eventually filters into, and then you're not terribly different than the next
mhm.
playthrough and the next playthrough and the next playthrough. It's the part that hurts me so much about the game, that the coolest stuff happens in the earlier phases. Once you start getting higher up in the tech tree and it starts slowing down, it starts getting more boring, and like the adaptations of my particular creature type are no longer being expressed, and now it's just the same game with slight variation. So
Mm.
yeah, that that definitely kind of reminds me, yes, the No Man's Sky experience, especially when I played it back in vanilla, and it really was like everything's cool and different within limitations, and you start to see more and more of the patterns repeating, and you see it from other people playing, and it's like, well, it's cool. I like naming things. I'm gonna
Yeah,
give everything funny names on this planet and leave my stain on this universe, but other
yeah.
than that, yeah.
And it's a great game. I don't even I think I'm ragging on it. I mean, that's probably the game I have the most hours in from anything in the last 5 years. So I enjoy it, but you do really quickly start to realize, even like the freighters, the ship fighting, like it all starts to basically kind of be the same thing. So all right, anything else in the yeah, I will put Max by mentions again. Would prefer dwarf armor set that can be put on by anyone, and the armor set doesn't change. I think that's what we would all like to see.
Yeah, if I ordered a cosmetic for full head to toe plate armor with the funny little crest on top and the fancy little cloth parts, I would hope to have at least the majority of that still be in full body, still having perhaps the crest on top expressed differently, perhaps for the different folk,
Mhm.
and where the cloth adornments are might be a bit different, so you can be like, oh yeah, Vec wear their things like that. That dude's probably a Vec. Uh, that matters little. I think you're probably more paying attention to, oh, that dude's wearing plate armor, and I see that he's got a two-handed sword, and he might be a whale.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep
Well,
thinking. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I liked in World of Warcraft that uh, any race can wear a Tauren outfit, but it's a Tauren outfit, even though it looks a little different based on the race. Like if you what's the zombie race called? I can't remember now, but
With the undead.
the yeah, the ones, they'll have holes that'll show their bones, through it.
The Are they the
Um,
Forsaken, or is that the other
they're
ones?
Forsaken. That's the Forsaken. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking of. The Forsaken, the Forsaken don't wear it exactly like the Tauren do, but when you look at, that it's coming from a Tauren village. You know that Tauren created it, and I didn't get that impression when they showed that example.
Hmm.
Is like I would not have known that was the same theme. Um, so
Yeah, I keep thinking
uh,
for some reason back to the Scarlet Monastery in World of Warcraft and the Scarlet Robes, and the
mm,
idea of a you know what they mean. If anyone that's ran that dungeon over and over, you know what it is. And so the idea, yeah,
mhm,
of like a Tauren wearing like a Tauren version, or the Night Elf version, or a gnome version, like I don't know, like I would want the same robes. Like I wouldn't
yeah,
want a version of them. Um, we're
yeah,
getting them from the area too, because that's the other part is the lore. Like they showed some of the, what's the dungeon we saw, the
Orphan?
Carfin, and they showed a Carfin set
mm,
this last stream too. Like again,
mm,
that's in the same idea. Like you're theoretically getting these items from the monsters in the zone. They aren't going to have like a Vec version and a like, I wouldn't think anyways. So I don't know. I would want the robes that actually come from the things that we are fighting
mhm.
in that in that dungeon. So I keep go on and on, but I'll quit. Well, I think we'll be back next Sunday. I don't think any of us have any reason not to.
If something comes up, we'll let you folks know. But otherwise, yeah. Yes, the ambitious academic armor for anybody who wants to look it up and see what we're talking about. Like they aren't even the same color. Like there's just so much about them that is so distinctly different. You know, if you tried to make the characters, you know, for both races, try to look like as close together as possible in face and skin tone and you know whatever within the tools, and then you dress them side by side like that, you'd know which one's which because they're just you know not literally like the night and day versions. They are night and day different.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I think we will wrap it up for today, and could keep going because of the spring forward. It only feels like it's an hour. Like we just started live, but work comes quickly tomorrow. So everyone have a great week. And as always, join us in Discord, hang out with us. We like to chat about games offline too. So yeah, we will see you all back here in a week. See ya.
Adios.